One of the main reasons that people love living here in Colorado is that we have such close proximity to so many trails and mountain ranges for all your outdoor activities. But what most people don't know is that Colorado Springs sits a lot closer to the mountains than Denver and surrounding suburbs. Colorado Springs itself sits at the base of Pikes Peak. Pikes Peak is one of our famous 14ers here in Colorado, meaning that its summit is over 14,000 feet. So if you are one of those looking to check off your boxes of climbing all the 14ers here in Colorado, or if you're just someone who loves to hike and just be outdoors, mountain bike, walk your dogs, whatever it may be, Colorado Springs may be a better fit for you than any of the other towns here on the Front Range. I'm gonna go over today the best 5 hikes here in Colorado Springs within city limits that you could actually get a pretty good workout and definitely get some elevation gain. So stay tuned to learn all about which hikes are the best here in town and what neighborhoods surround those trailheads. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Living in Colorado Springs and I am Alicia Armendariz. If you guys have any questions over anything that I mentioned today, please feel free to reach out to me. I am a licensed broker here in the state of Colorado and love to help you with your real estate needs. But with that being said, I wanted to go over today the best 5 places to find in-town hiking trails. Now, off the bat, we have a million trails throughout Colorado and Colorado Springs. So if you guys are not familiar with the app All Trails, I would definitely recommend downloading that if you haven't already. It's a pretty popular app. It actually consists of trails and maps and photos and just general information about trails across the whole US. So I do feel like this is a pretty popular app. There is a free version and there is a paid version. I believe the paid version is like around $35 a month. I definitely recommend if you're going to get into hiking, especially here in Colorado, you definitely download that app and use it, just because a lot of the trails kind of venture off and they change names, or they kind of look like another trail that you thought you wanted to stay on, or sometimes the more advanced trails, the further you get into the trail, the markers are either not there or maybe they faded and rusted away. So I would definitely recommend looking on that app before you start any of your trails, kind of just for safety reasons and just so you have an idea of where you're going. So in this video though, I'm going to be going over the 5 kind of more places rather than trails itself, because each of these places in town offer a variety of different trails and trailheads. So with that being said, I'm going to start just on the southwest side of town because it's easier for me to remember these parks this way. Off the bat, we're gonna go with Red Rocks Canyon Open Space. And Red Rocks Canyon Open Space is on the southwest side of town. It's off of Highway 24, and it has about 3 different parking lots for you to kind of start from a variety of different trailheads. Red Rock Canyon Open Space is definitely one of our bigger parks here in town. That's why you're gonna find that it's usually pretty busy on a nice sunny day or even on a snowy day, because a lot of the trails are actually really good for cross-country skiing. The park itself overall consists of a ton of trails and then these big, huge red rock formations that actually are good for climbing, just rock climbing in general. You do need to get a permit through the city to rock climb, but you know, it is not uncommon to see many people and their kiddos out there scaling these big, red rocks. So that is another feature to take advantage of. The park at the front also has kind of a BMX section. They were supposed to be making this section in 3 phases. I think they've only done 1, but I'm not sure just because I don't do BMX riding. But you will see that there is a BMX part kind of right at one of the main entrances of the parking lot. This park is also really good for dogs. I feel like the trails are very wide for the most part, so when there are a lot of people, if you have a dog that kind of likes to whine back and forth and sniff everything, you're gonna be able to kind of go past people without your dogs getting tangled up or kiddos and dogs getting tangled up and things of that sort. There are also 2 off-leash dog parks kind of within Red Rock Canyon Park. They're not a bad size. They have really pretty views, but they are also kind of more at the entrance of the park. Dogs do need to be on a leash the entire time, and the off-leash section is really the only place that they can be off-leash. This park is really good for those that are beginner hikers and beginning mountain bikers, and then also those that are advanced hikers and mountain bikers. As I had mentioned, the trails in the beginning, when you first get out of the parking lot, are going to be rather wide. They're kind of red, sandy. They're a little mushy when it rains or snows, but for the most part, it's just kind of a red, sandy trail. And as I mentioned, they're really wide. So as you start to make your way kind of more into the park, you do find that the trails get to kind of single tracks, and they definitely start to get a incline. The elevation gain within Red Rock Canyon space is usually between 500 feet to 1,800 feet. So some of those back trails, especially section 16, which is a very popular trail within Red Rock Canyon open space, is definitely going to be more of a advanced, intermediate to advanced trail. There's a couple of loops and there's a couple of there and back options, and you could probably get about 6 miles round trip. Again, if you jump on that All Trails app that I had mentioned, you can, find your own trails, and you could be out there all day if you wanted to. Some of the neighborhoods here in town that either back up and actually have backyard access to these trails, or are just close enough by that you could probably walk to the park itself, are going to be the east side of Manitou Springs, Crystal Hills, Pleasant Valley, Skyway, and then also Gold Hill Mesa. Next up on this list is going to be one of our famous landmarks, and that is going to be Garden of the Gods. Garden of the Gods actually sits just a little north of Highway 24 and a little north of that Red Rock Canyon open space. And as I said, is a big, huge attraction, not only just here in Colorado Springs, but just the state of Colorado. Garden of the Gods is kind of an interesting park to me because it does get a lot of tourists, more so in the last year or two than ever before. There are multiple parking lots kind of through Garden of the Gods itself, but a lot of those parking lots kind of lead to the main kind of just intersection of the park, to where you can, take pictures and kind of be in awe of the big red rocks that are Garden of the Gods. A lot of those trails are not really trails, in my opinion. They are big, wide pavement for people to kind of just walk around and loop. If you actually want to get on a kind of dirt trail and hike, you have to kind of go on the trails just outside of the road. So you're going to have a lot of roads that kind of just loop around Garden of the Gods itself. There are, like I said, multiple parking lots, and then also kind of off the street parking. So since it does get so many tourists and just locals every day, you might have to circle the entire park a few times to find parking. But from there, if you don't go inwards towards the park on one of those trails, you're going to be able to find just any trailhead to those dirt trails outside of it. There's going to be about 21 miles of trails that kind of loop outside of the park itself, and also expect to find a lot of people with their dogs, a lot of people with their horses, and just a lot of people in general. As I mentioned, it is one of our busiest parks here in town. Garden of the God also allows rock climbing. You do have to get a permit from the city and I believe the Garden of the Gods Nature Center, but you are allowed to scale and climb those big, large rocks, and it is not uncommon for you to be either driving around the park or hiking and notice that somebody is way up top. You're also going to notice that there are bighorn sheep that roam in Garden of the Gods, and it is also not uncommon to see them up on the rocks, up on the cliffs, looking down at all the tourists below. I will say, out of all the parks that we do have here in town, Garden of the Gods, for being as busy as it is, also has probably the most wildlife. So you do have to look out when you are on those trails for rattlesnakes in the summer, those bighorn sheep, rattlesnakes, I think I said that, big birds like big hawks and things if you have small dogs, and kind of just a variety of little critters. If you do have a horse and you want to take your horse out on the trail, you are more than welcome to. The park also offers horseback riding tours, but you do have to load your horse from the trading post. You can't just park anywhere and kind of take your horse out. You do need to go to the local trading post that is kind of within the park, and from there are trails more so for the horses. Again, that app, All Trails, is really going to be your best bet if you want to do a beginning, intermediate, or advanced hike. It's going to let you know which trail to jump on. It's going to let you know kind of the condition of the trail at that time during the season. It's going to tell you what the crowd levels are. And again, for that park, since it does get so many tourists, I really recommend that you guys jump on the app to kind of get a feel of what trail is probably right for you and your family. Some of our neighborhoods that surround the Garden of the Gods are Cedar Heights, Pleasant Valley again, Kissing Camels, and Cathedral Ridge at Garden of the Gods. Cathedral Ridge at Garden of the Gods is definitely one of our luxury neighborhoods with some of the best views in the entire state, in my opinion. And moving on a little bit further north and also still staying on the west side of I-25, you're gonna come across Ute Valley. And I like Ute Valley because it truly does offer trails that give you an elevation gain of 200 to 500 feet, which I feel like is a little decent sweat. You can definitely get a sweat on. But it's also still really close to a lot of good neighborhoods. There's a neighborhood to the west and then to the north. And the neighborhood to the west actually has backyards that kind of dump into Ute Valley Park. Ute Valley Park also kind of sits right next to, I believe it's a middle school. There is a school there. I think it's elementary school or middle school. So it's kind of there in the heart of Rock Rimmon is kind of the overall area. But Ute Valley Park has some flat trails and then also kind of some single tracks that are, in my opinion, are kind of traditional, where it starts to get a little difficult with some boulders in the middle of the trail. It starts to have some big roots that you got to climb over. You are allowed to have pets, but those pets do need to stay on a leash at all times. I do occasionally see somebody there with their dog off a leash, which is fine if the dog is well behaved, because I feel like this, even though it's an open space in a park, it's just a little bit smaller than some of our other ones. And so I feel like more the locals in that Rock Rimmon area and those neighborhoods kind of use that park more so. These trails within Ute Valley Park are going to be really good for just your typical hiking, trail running, and mountain biking. Some of the neighborhoods nearby are going to be the Flying W Ranch, and then also, as I said, kind of just the Rock Rimmon area as a whole. But if we're really going to pin down those neighborhoods that are right across the street and back up to it, it's going to be Pine Cliff, South Face, and Pinyon Valley. Next on this list of best places to hike here in town is literally in the smack dab of town, and that's going to be Pulpit Rock. Pulpit Rock is actually part of Austin Bluffs open space, but the rock itself is very easy to find. You can see it right from the interstate, whether you're northbound or southbound. It sits just east of the interstate, kind of tucked between a big shopping center, a couple of neighborhoods, and then UCCS, that college there. So the park itself has about 10 miles worth of trails that kind of loop around the rock itself. And then there is a trail that'll take you from 3 of the parking lots up to the top of Pulpit Rock. Depending on your experience hiking, it could take you anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. There's not a whole lot of elevation gain in this park except to the rock itself, and it's going to be about 550 feet. Otherwise, all of the other trails that kind of just loop around the rock are going to kind of lead in and out of the neighborhoods also. So I find that most of the people that are kind of walking on those more flatter trails are the local residents. Some of those trails are going to be wide in section, and then others are going to be very narrow and kind of single tracked. You are allowed to have dogs there, but you do have to keep them on a leash at all times. I find that most of the people that do climb to the top of Pulpit Rock are usually those UCCS students who have a break from school or whatever and kind of just messing around. I myself don't do that hike often. Kind of done it once and I was good, but I do recommend everybody do it at least once, because the view from the top of Pulpit Rock is really amazing. You have views of the entire mountain range to the west, which is Cheyenne Mountain down south, Pikes Peak, and then also some of the mountain range up north. And then if you turn around and you look out east, you have the rest of like the city and kind of just the flat plains, which are also very pretty. The neighborhoods that surround Pulpit Rock are going to be Pulpit Rock neighborhood, University Heights, University Park, and also Garden Ranch Estates. And last but not least on this list is going to be Palmer Park. Palmer Park is slightly south of Pulpit Rock. It also sits just to the east of I-25. It pretty much is smack dab in the middle of Colorado Springs. It is also probably one of our bigger open spaces also. It's a little over 730 acres, I believe, and is honestly one of my favorites. I love it because it is centrally located. It does have a variety of trails. It also has several kind of park benches that are just off of the road that you could kind of rent out for a picnic or family get together or whatever. I feel like this trail, or I should say this park, offers trails that if I'm having kind of a low energy day with my dog, I can kind of keep it mellow and we can still get a good hike in. If we're feeling adventurous and we want to really get a sweat on, then there are definitely a lot of trails where you're climbing over boulders, you're climbing over big tree roots, and there's kind of cliffs and what have you. So I feel like this is just kind of a one-stop shop when you are looking for trails within city limits. Another great thing about Palmer Park is that they do have an off-leash dog trail, and it starts at the Yucca Flats trailhead, kind of at the top. And I love that for my dog because my dog is just super well behaved, and you know, she kind of gets to do her thing while I do my thing, and she loves climbing boulders, and so climbing boulders with the leash is just kind of difficult sometimes. So I like that off-leash trail does start pretty wide and then can kind of go into a single track and get treacherous, or you can kind of venture off and stay on the off-leash dog trail that stays wide and kind of just mellow and flat. So on the weekends or just a nice day, definitely expect a lot of people to be out there. I recommend if you are going to take your dog and be off leash with it, that your dog be pretty well behaved. I would say here in Colorado, everybody loves dogs. Everybody has a dog, but people really expect you to have a well-behaved dog and definitely pick up after it, especially if you're going to be on those off-leash trails. There are quite a few neighborhoods that surround Palmer Park and then also kind of just back up right onto the trails itself. And those are going to be the neighborhood of Palmer Park, Century Heights, parts of University Park, and then also St. Andrews. So before I wrap up this video, the last thing I want to talk about, which I feel is very important, is the trail etiquette. If you are a beginner at hiking or mountain biking or whatever, or you just have never heard of trail etiquette, you better believe here in Colorado, avid trail users are going to bite your head off if you do not follow these rules. So with that being said, to begin, I feel like the most important one is the leave no trace behind. And basically what that means is leave no trace that you were there. Pick up all your trash. Pick up trash of others that you see. Pick up your dog's waste. Don't pick the flowers. Don't mess with the vegetation. Stay on the trails. If you start kind of venturing off designated trails, you're going to kind of start to mess with the ecosystems and just the wildlife and the vegetation, and the city will come in and they will close down that area that you had been walking around in and messing in. And then for the next 2 to 3 years, that whole trail may be closed down. And I have had sometimes some of my favorite trails be closed down for 2 to 3 years while they let that ecosystem kind of rebuild itself, because people for a while had been venturing off the designated trail and, you know, just messing with it. So very upsetting to me and very upsetting to a lot of other Colorado natives, and then just all the other people who are like avid trail users. Next, you are going to see there are going to be some markers on most trails, and they're going to kind of give you a trail name and a little arrow so you know which way to go. But you're also going to come across signs that have kind of like a little triangle, and it's going to have little icons of a person, a cyclist, and a horse. And it tells you who you yield to. Sometimes these trails get really packed or really busy, or you just have kind of a hiker versus a mountain biker, and if you don't yield appropriately, people can get hurt. So when you see the little triangle, just know that mountain bikers and walkers or hikers yield to equestrians. Don't spook a horse on the trail because it won't be good. If you do come across somebody who is walking their horse or riding their horse, kind of stand to the side or just stand still and let the horse pass first. Cyclists yield to hikers and walkers. A lot of times there are mountain bikers that are just flying down the mountain, and I get it. Sometimes they can't slow down, or they're just being kind of a jerk. But as a cyclist, you do need to yield to walkers. So that is your responsibility as a mountain biker to either be on a trail that is not really used for hikers, or you need to really pay attention and you need to almost come to a complete stop or slow down when you're coming across hikers. Because if you run into them and you get tangled up in them, I guarantee it's not going to be pretty, and it's going to be your fault, and there can be repercussions. But I think the trail etiquette that you're probably going to come across the most is who yields to who when it comes to people going uphill versus downhill. And it's always going to be that the downhill person is always yielding to the uphill. So if you are hiking and you're coming down and someone's going up, just kind of stop or kind of pull over to the side, take a break, because it is harder to be trekking up some of these tracks. Those are just some things to note. There is definitely trail etiquette here on the trails in Colorado. If you want to look them up yourselves, by all means, Google it, make a list. It is everywhere. And like I said, a lot of the natives here, they're really sticklers about some of the trail etiquette. So, but if you guys have any questions on anything that I mentioned in this video or any of the neighborhoods nearby, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I am a licensed broker here in the state of Colorado, and I would love to help you guys with your real estate needs. But if you could, hit that subscribe button and bell to get notified when I make new videos each week on everything that is living in Colorado Springs.